It was one of those long, restless nights when everything felt heavier than usual. The rain had been falling since evening, tapping steadily against the window of Emily Carter's small apartment in Portland. She had fallen asleep on the couch with her laptop still glowing faintly beside her. Her job at the design firm had drained her energy, and lately she felt like she was moving through life on autopilot. She didn't expect anyone that night, especially not him. The door creaked softly. It's the kind of sound that instantly pulls you from half sleep to full awareness. Emily stirred, her mind foggy, unsure if she was dreaming. The sound came again, a gentle push, the slow turn of a handle. Her heart raced as she sat up, clutching the blanket around her. The apartment was dimly lit, only the soft hum of the fridge and the patter of rain filling the silence. Then came a voice, low, trembling, and achingly familiar. Her breath caught. She hadn't heard that voice in years, 3 long years that felt like a lifetime. When she turned toward the sound, her eyes widened. Standing near the door was her father, Mark Carter. The last time they'd spoken. The conversation had ended with anger, pride, and silence that neither could break afterward. Now he was here, older, thinner. His gray jacket was soaked from the rain, and his eyes, once sharp and full of certainty, looked softer, almost fragile. Emily's first instinct was disbelief. She blinked, as if the vision might disappear. "Dad!" she whispered. He nodded slowly, his mouth curving into a hesitant smile. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said. The door was unlocked. Emily didn't know what to say. The man who had once been her hero, her teacher, and later her biggest source of pain, was standing in her living room like no time had passed at all. She noticed the small tremor in his hands, the exhaustion in his stance. Something inside her shifted, a mixture of hurt, confusion, and something else she didn't want to name yet. Relief. "Why are you here?" she asked finally, her voice steady but cautious. He looked around the room, his gaze pausing on the family photos. She still hadn't taken down pictures of the 3 of them before her mother passed away, before everything fell apart. "I was passing through town," he said softly. "I just wanted to see you." Emily stood there, unsure how to respond. She had imagined this moment many times, rehearsed speeches in her head about how much his absence had hurt her. But now that he was here, all those words disappeared. She saw only a man trying to hold himself together, his pride stripped away. "Sit down," she said quietly, motioning toward the couch. He hesitated before taking a seat, glancing at her like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be there. The rain outside grew heavier, echoing in the silence between them. He took a deep breath. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he began. "I just couldn't keep pretending the past didn't happen. I thought I was doing what was right back then, leaving after your mom died. I thought you'd be better off without my mess. But I was wrong." Emily's eyes burned, but she didn't look away. "You left without saying goodbye," she said quietly. "You didn't even come to my graduation. I kept waiting for you to show up. Every time the door opened, I thought maybe you'd walk in." Her father lowered his head. "I know, and I regret it every single day." There was no anger in her voice, only exhaustion. She had spent too many nights wondering what had gone wrong, blaming herself for things that were never her fault. Hearing him admit it didn't erase the pain, but it cracked something open inside her, a small space where understanding could breathe. "I thought you hated me," she confessed, almost whispering. He looked up at her, his eyes glassy. "I never hated you, Emily. I hated myself. I didn't know how to be a father after losing your mom. Every time I looked at you, I saw her. And instead of being strong for you, I ran." The words hung heavy in the room. The thunder outside rumbled like a reminder of everything unsaid between them. Emily turned her face away, tears slipping down her cheeks despite her effort to hide them. She didn't want him to see her crying out again. "I needed you," she said finally. "You were the only parent I had left, and you just disappeared." Her father swallowed hard. "I know," he said softly, "and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, even if you never forgive me." For the first time, Emily noticed the small details. She'd missed the deep lines on his face, The tiredness in his shoulders, the faint smell of rain mixed with old cologne. Time had changed him, just as it had changed her. She walked toward the window, watching the city lights blur through the rain. "You could have called," she murmured. "I did," he said quietly. "I called your number once every few months. I'd hang up before you answered. I just wanted to hear your voice, to know you were okay." Her chest tightened. She turned back to him, torn between anger and compassion. "Why didn't you say something?" He gave a small, broken laugh. "Because I didn't think I deserved to." For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm outside grew louder, as if the world was echoing their turmoil. Emily sat down across from him, her hands clasped tightly together. Despite everything, she could feel something inside her soften her, quiet ache that wasn't just pain anymore, but longing. "What do you want from me now?" she asked, not harshly, but honestly. He looked at her with eyes full of regret. "Just a chance to know you again." The simplicity of it broke her. There was no grand apology, no dramatic plea, just a man asking for another chance not to erase the past, but to rebuild something from the pieces that were left. Emily took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of rain and memory. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she admitted. "I understand," he said quietly, "but I'll be here even if you can't yet." A flash of lightning lit the room, followed by a deep rumble of thunder. The power flickered, then went out completely. The apartment fell into darkness except for the faint glow of streetlights seeping through the curtains. For a moment, it felt like the world had paused around them, in that silence. Emily heard the rain more clearly, the sound almost calming. She thought about her childhood, the nights when storms scared her. And her father would sit by her bed, telling her the thunder was just the sky talking to the earth. Those memories were distant, but not gone. "I used to love the rain because of you," she said softly. Her father smiled sadly. "I remember." Something inside her shifted again, small, fragile, but real. The walls she had built for years didn't crumble, but they cracked enough for light to seep through. She didn't know what forgiveness would look like, or if it would ever fully come. But she knew she didn't want to shut the door on him anymore. "I don't know what happens next," she said after a while. "That's okay," he replied. "We can start with coffee tomorrow. Just talk." Emily nodded faintly. It wasn't a promise, but it was something as the storm raged on. They sat in silence, two people trying to mend what time had broken. The darkness around them didn't feel so heavy anymore. It felt like the beginning of something uncertain but necessary. When Emily finally got up to fetch a candle, she glanced at him once more. He was looking out the window, his reflection blending with the night. For the first time in years, he looked peaceful. That night, as the storm softened and the city quieted, Emily realized that life rarely gives us the endings we expect. Sometimes it gives us second chances disguised as uncomfortable beginnings. And though she didn't say it out loud, part of her knew nothing would ever be the same after that night. Everything had changed. Morning came quietly to Emily Carter's apartment. The rain from the night before reduced to a soft drizzle that tapped gently against the window. The air smelled of wet pavement and damp earth, a clean freshness that seemed to promise something new. Emily was already awake, sitting at the small kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. Her father, Mark Carter, was across from her, staring into his own mug as if the warmth might melt years of regret. The night had been long and heavy, yet it had opened a door neither of them expected to see. They hadn't spoken much since the storm had cut the electricity, leaving only candlelight to illuminate the room. The previous night had been filled with confessions, awkward pauses, and the occasional silence that was louder than words. Now, in the morning light, everything seemed more real, more immediate. Emily studied him as he traced the rim of his cup with a finger, careful and slow, like he was measuring every moment, making it count. "You got some sleep?" she asked quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. He nodded, though his eyes betrayed a sleeplessness she knew she could never fully understand. "Not really, but I didn't mind." Emily glanced down at her own hands, still trembling slightly from last night's emotions. She remembered the look on his face when he admitted he had hated himself for leaving her. How fragile he seemed when he confessed he had feared seeing her because it reminded him of her mother. For years, she had imagined that moment, how it might feel to confront him after all that time. But nothing in her imagination had prepared her for the reality. He was human, deeply human. And that made the hurt and the hope intertwine in ways she hadn't expected. "I didn't realize how much I missed this," Mark said finally, his voice quiet but sincere. "Not just your presence, just knowing you were there, somewhere I could reach." Emily took a sip of her coffee, letting the bitter warmth steady her. She had thought about what she would say if he ever came back, rehearsed lines that would protect her heart. But nothing mattered now. She realized the years of waiting hadn't made her stronger. They had only made her long for closure. She wanted to understand him, to hear him, not to relive the pain. "Mom's gone," she said softly, her gaze dropping to the table. "And somehow, I've been pretending I don't miss her as much as I do." Mark reached across and placed his hand on hers, tentative, careful, as if he feared she might pull away. "I know," he said. "I've felt it too. Every single day. And I didn't know how to be the father you needed without her. I thought leaving would protect you. I was wrong. I see that now." Emily let the words wash over her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel anger. Not completely. There was still pain, yes, but there was also relief, a strange, delicate relief that the man who had hurt her most had returned, not to justify himself, but simply to acknowledge it. They talked for hours. The conversation winding between memories, regrets, and small moments of laughter that surprised both of them. He spoke about her mother, about the challenges he faced after her passing, about nights spent alone with memories too heavy to bear. Emily listened, sometimes with tears, sometimes with a quiet smile at his recollections. She noticed the way his eyes softened when he spoke of her. A deep love she had almost forgotten existed. By midday, the tension that had clung to the apartment for years began to ease. They shared stories about Emily's life, her work, her friends, small victories she had never mentioned before. He listened genuinely, like he wanted to know every detail he had missed. Emily realized how much she had wanted this, not just an apology, but a presence, a father who cared, a chance to rebuild something real. "Do you remember when you used to wake me up on Saturdays with pancakes?" Emily asked suddenly, a small laugh escaping her. Mark smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "Of course. You always complained they weren't sweet enough, but I made them anyway. I loved those mornings." A warmth spread through Emily's chest, a sense of nostalgia that was comforting rather than painful. It felt like those lost years were slowly being stitched together, thread by thread, with quiet conversations and shared memories. As the day moved forward, Mark prepared to leave, but the moment felt different now. The distance between them was no longer as vast, replaced by a tentative connection that neither wanted to break. Emily walked him to the door, her hand brushing against his briefly. "You've changed," she said softly, meaning it as an observation, not a judgment. "So have you," he replied, his voice gentle. "And that's okay. We don't have to be who we were. We just have to be here, together, now." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She didn't know if she could fully forgive him yet, but she knew she wanted to try. She wanted to rebuild something that had been broken for too long. Before leaving, Mark handed her a small envelope. "Open it when you're ready," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. "It's nothing complicated, just my thoughts." Curious, Emily watched him leave, feeling a strange emptiness in the apartment without his presence. She set the envelope on the table, unsure if she was ready to read it, but knowing she would. That night, the drizzle had returned. A soft reminder that life continued, that healing was a slow process, and that she wasn't alone anymore. When she finally opened the envelope, her father's handwriting greeted her. The words were simple, heartfelt, and full of regret and love. "No matter where I am with you. Every morning, every quiet moment, every storm, I am there. I don't expect forgiveness right away, or maybe ever, but I want you to know that I am yours in the way a father should be. Love, Dad. Emily sat at the table, tears running freely this time, but they were no longer heavy with sorrow. They were tears of relief, of understanding, of hope. She realized that the man who had left years ago was still the man she had loved, flawed and human, but willing to try again. That night she stood by the window, watching the rain wash the streets clean. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt a sense of peace. She whispered softly to herself, everything really did change. She knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be moments of doubt, sadness, and questions she didn't have answers for yet. But for the first time, she understood that reconciliation wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something new, fragile but real. From what remained, as she turned from the window, she noticed the envelope still lying on the table. She smiled faintly, picking it up once more. The rain outside had stopped, leaving the night quiet and calm. Emily felt the stirrings of hope, the kind that comes after pain, the kind that whispers that life, love, and connection are always worth the effort. Her father had returned not to rewrite history, but to be part of the future. And in that realization, Emily felt a tenderness she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. It was not the ending she had expected, but it was a beginning she could embrace. She closed her eyes, breathing in the cool night air, feeling the quiet strength that came from letting someone back into your life. She knew that tomorrow and every day after would carry the possibility of healing, understanding, and connection. And she was ready to face it. Everything had truly changed.